So welcome to another Dojo video. My name is Sensei Rokas, and today we're going to look at something more specific or more deeper actually. So there's a common question or a common debate. Some people call Aikido a spiritual martial art, but actually oftentimes it's just, there's a bit of a gap there. Spiritual martial art that gives a question mark and you don't really understand how it works, and not often you can actually see an example of how it works or understand. The founder himself spoke a lot about Aikido as a spiritual art, but then the word itself, spiritual, is quite tricky. And most likely we're going to look at the question more deeply in our other videos, but to put it simply, myself, the way I see the word spiritual, for me, being spiritual or the spirituality is understanding that you're, and feeling and understanding that you're a part of a bigger whole. That you're not a separate individual that is unconnected to everyone else and whatever you do has consequences only to you. That's not spiritual. Spiritual means you understand that everything has a reason for happening and there's a consequence for everything, and that everything is so connected that what I do has influence to everything else. And another part of the spiritual would be the understanding that connectedness is actually, there's a sense of an intelligence in it. So let's say the very simple fact that my heart beats by itself. I'm breathing air by myself naturally. There's the digestion happening naturally. The trees change, birds fly where they need to. There's a lot of this deeper intelligence which actually kind of works all together in a certain mix. And if you understand that, if you feel that, there's a sense, that's what I would call getting closer to being spiritual. But being spiritual itself, for me, it means that you're actually contributing to that whole, that you're actually doing your best to not live only for yourself, that you're actually respecting that fact that we're all in this, we're all together in this, and what I do first, and I try to do my best to help support that. I try to understand that as best as I can, and I try to work in order to make the whole as better as it can be. So for me, that is spiritual, and many different traditions, and the Indian tradition or the Japanese Zen, Hindu. If you look at it, obviously they introduce it in a bit of a different way, but you'll most likely see that connection with what I say with that. It's just that I'm trying to be very practical. But then when we come back to our sensei himself, he was a lot about the fact that we all have a life mission. That's what he said. We all have a purpose. We all have a mission, that an individual has his mission, a family has his mission, a country has his mission, and the world has a mission. So, and he also spoke a lot about the fact that we're all one. He used to say, "I am the universe," a famous quote, which is hard to understand it sometimes, but actually in a sense that means that that he understood that he is a part of the whole. He is actually that whole. And again, we could look at it with more detail, but I'm just trying to say in a short way that Sensei, the founder of Aikido, he was about that. But then what we're going to look at soon enough in terms of a practical sense is that, as I said in the beginning, when you hear about that spiritual part, it's hard to connect that with Aikido sometimes, especially since a lot of Aikido schools are just, you do and repeat techniques, and there's not even much talking. It depends on the school, it depends on the teacher, but that's what we oftentimes see. And then there's the question mark. So, okay, I hear about the spirituality, I hear about life mission, etc., but I don't really see that happening in Aikido. One part of it is the uke-nage relationship, and we could talk about that, but there's something else as well. So myself, in order to help people improve that sense of, let's say, spirituality, of feeling as a part of the whole and contributing to it, in my classes I do my best to integrate the techniques with a certain feeling, with a certain direction, so that people would not evolve only technically, not only in a self-defensive way, but actually in a self-development way, that they would actually develop on a deep level. They would become better as they train, not better only in techniques, but better as human beings as well. And again, you might have a question mark and say, how can you do that? That's hard. So right now, actually I'm going to show you just one out of many, but an example of how actually you can do that. So now, when we're working with Aikido, and so we'll start with a basic Taina Henko technique. If you watched my first tutorial about this technique, you'll probably know that I already touched a bit of a spiritual topic here of not resisting, of blending together, of being connected, of being able to see the perspective of the person. But there's something even more simple and basic that you can do here. So when I teach Aikido myself, I rely on something that I call qualities. So quality is a certain direction that you can either tap into or just ignore. And what's interesting is that by training people, eventually a lot of people get there, but unconsciously. But if you start with it consciously, that makes a big difference. So the quality that I'm going to look right now with you is we call openness. So openness, if he grabs, that's tension here. So that tension, it's a physical tension right now, but actually that tension you can feel it in every life situation. You get your taxes, your tire pops, you get in a stressful situation, there's tension. And now the way my body responds to that, normally if there's tension, I tense up and I go one against one. But if I tense up, if I try to do something to him, he also tenses up. And now we fight. The stronger is going to win. I will get exhausted even if I win. But if we look at the quality of openness, I don't focus on that point too much. If there's stress, first of all, physically, very simply, I allow myself to open up. And now if you try that ever, or even you can see that, when I open up, a connection actually happens between us. Now he feels me better than before. Here, we meet at this point, we're against. If I open up, now we're connected, now we're together. There is a sense of movement. Now I can actually move easier. And if you look at Aikido masters, most of the times they're very open without actually even expressing anything about that. The back is straight, the arms are alive, but you can do it consciously. So I open up, and now as I'm open, it's much actually easier to do the technique itself as well. And in Tai no Henko, that's one part, but there's other parts as well. So let's say there's a tsuki koragashi. As he punches, if I'm in myself, if I'm bent, he punches. Even on a technical level, now my arms are disconnected from the center. It's hard to do the technique. I don't see what's happening around. It's a poor technique. If I open myself, now the back is straight. I'm using my whole body. Arms are connected with the center. It's much easier to do the technique, and that's how advanced people do it. But now that openness, if you get used to open up, if you get into the habit of opening up, that transfers to so many places of your life. Let's say if you go to an audition, or if you go to a meeting about your new job interview, there's stress, the body wants to close down, but if you get used to it, and if you close down, it's hard to talk. It's hard to give a good impression about yourself. But if you learn to getting used to open up, suddenly there's space. Suddenly you start to trust yourself. Suddenly it's easier to express yourself, easier to make a good impression. So there's so much more you can do on so many levels. But to learn that just by talking, doing, it's hard. But let's say, and now imagine, you come to Aikido, and the whole class, you work on opening up. And the technique is there. If he grabs me, I still do the technique. I still develop myself, but then I also develop a sense of openness. I also develop a sense of self-development. And that gives just so much more depth to our training. So I know this is just a tiny bit of what's possible, but I hope that you see a glimpse of how you can actually transmit the spiritual Aikido, the desire to become more connected with everything, the desire to be more meaningful, more purposeful, more better, and not against, but with, which are actually the principles of Aikido. You can actually do that even while doing the techniques, not doing so much, not changing so much, but just changing your focus. That can change the whole world. So I hope you understand what I mean. If you have trouble with understanding, let me know in the comments. If you want more of those videos, there's many more qualities that we work with, and trust me, it works really well. I use it all the time myself. So if you want to know more, let me know. We're going to shoot some more videos, and I'll explain to you about the other qualities and how to tap into them. So all in all, thank you to my uke, thank you to the camera person, and this is Sensei Rokas, and see you on the virtual mat again soon.